She told me I was too good and that she needed someone with more danger. She left with her supposed bad boy. But he turned out to be useless even at keeping a job. While he jumps from couch to couch, she discovered too late that stable men build homes, and rebels just look for a place to sleep. My name is Ethan. I'm 32 and live in Colorado. My life isn't a movie full of adventures, but it's solid and well organized. I've spent over a decade working my way up from the most basic positions to become a senior project chief. I started out earning around $50,000 a year, involved in municipal projects that no one admired, but that kept the city running. Traffic studies, storm drains, necessary tasks that no one celebrates. Over time, I moved up to commercial projects and larger infrastructure with a salary that grew significantly. Instead of spending it on expensive cars or useless whims, I managed it wisely. 5 years ago, I bought a 3-bedroom house. It wasn't perfect, but I got it for a good price because it needed renovations. I used my weekends to fix it up. I renovated the kitchen, sanded and varnished the floors, changed the light fixtures, and slowly transformed it into a cozy place. Much of what I learned was thanks to tutorials and what my father taught me. Over time, the property value increased by almost 30%. In addition, I own a 2015 Ford truck, bought used and paid off in full 2 years ago, without suffocating monthly payments. I also have an emergency fund that covers half a year of expenses, a good retirement plan, and enough savings to handle any unforeseen event without losing my calm. My life isn't surprising, but it's stable. And my financial decisions have always been met with approval from any financial advisor. My weekends used to have a simple, yet satisfying routine, hiking with Buddy, my 4-year-old golden retriever mix that I adopted from a shelter. Every Saturday, and sometimes Sunday, we explored new mountain trails. I also always had some pending home project. And several times a month, I met up with my college friends for dinner, to watch sports or play video games. Nothing extraordinary, but it was a balanced and peaceful life. In the middle of that stability was Clara, who was 28 at the time. We had been together for 3 years. We met at a barbecue organized by mutual friends during a perfect summer. The afternoon had that typical Colorado weather, mountains in the distance, a relaxed atmosphere, and conversations that flowed easily. Matthew, one of my friends, had brought his girlfriend, and Clara was part of their group. She wore a light dress and had an attention-grabbing smile. We ended up talking almost all afternoon. We started dating casually, dinners, movies, simple outings. She was friendly, conversational, and physically attractive. After half a year, the relationship became more serious. She worked as a receptionist at a downtown dental clinic. She earned enough to cover her expenses and lived in a shared apartment across town, though she spent nearly half the week at my house. At first, everything seemed normal until certain comments started to surface, which, looking back, were clear signals that something was brewing in her head. Every so often, she would mention how exciting a coworker's boyfriend was just because he rode a motorcycle, or how spontaneous men seemed when they made last-minute plans without worrying about anything. I took it as mere conversation. My mistake. The same happened when we watched movies. If a character did something impulsive and irresponsible, she would release a quiet, romantic sigh that wasn't accidental, but the clearest signs came from her group of high school friends. Each one had a love life more chaotic than the last. One was dating a night bartender who slept during the day, another an unemployed actor who trained at a gym for a few hours, and another was with a guy who lived in a van because he claimed to be a minimalist. Clara would come back from their meetings talking about the craziness of these couples as if they were fascinating stories. She found it exciting that a friend had paid for a spontaneous trip to the desert because her boyfriend didn't have money, or that another received poems from a man who lived with his parents at 32. I listened to everything without noticing she was comparing us. The signals continued. She started insisting on doing things without planning, driving to the mountains at midnight to watch the sunrise, even knowing I had work early, or booking sudden trips without consulting my work schedule, getting upset when I couldn't accompany her because, well, I had responsibilities. "You're always busy," she complained. "Sometimes I want to feel free." I calmly replied that having a job meant fixed hours, but that wasn't enough for her. Still, our relationship had routines we enjoyed, dinners at restaurants we loved, an Italian place where the owner already knew our order, or Sunday morning breakfasts. During the week, we usually had dinner together at my house. I generally cooked while she chatted, and Buddy settled beside her. She said she never learned because her mother, Victoria, didn't cook much when she was a child. I didn't mind taking on that part. Afterward, we watched our favorite series in the living room. She would hug Buddy while I checked work emails or looked for ideas for upcoming house repairs. Weekends also had their charm. Sometimes we went out for breakfast, other times we bought things for the house at large stores. Where she pointed out decorations she said we would use in our future home, even though we weren't officially living together yet. It seemed we were on a quiet, consistent path, one where we both contributed what we could without major dramas. But although I didn't see it then, Clara was building up expectations that directly clashed with the way I lived, organized, stable, and with long-term plans. And in her head, excitement seemed to hold more value than reality. I began to notice certain details that I interpreted at the time as signs that the relationship was heading towards something more serious. Even when Clara showed me things I would never have thought to buy, I understood it as an indication that she envisioned a future with me, something stable and long-term. I felt that our bond had been built naturally. We started with casual dates, then moved on to sharing family celebrations, important holidays, and conversations, even if superficial, about the future. For me, it was clear that the next logical step would be engagement. In fact, about 2 months before everything fell apart, I had already started researching engagement rings. I used my work breaks to look at display cases, learn about types of cut, clarity, and all those characteristics that had never caught my attention. I even talked to Matthew and then asked his girlfriend for advice to understand what style Clara might like. I even imagined a special moment for the proposal, a short trip in spring, perhaps returning to that place in the mountains where we had hiked on one of our first dates. I planned to prepare a small picnic and wait for sunset to kneel down, like in those classic scenes that seemed cheesy, but she loved. Of course, all of that meant saving, and a lot. Clara often showed me photos of her friends' engagement rings, pointing out which ones she thought were the prettiest, and they all cost between $8,000 and $10,000. So, I opened a savings account exclusively for the ring. I started depositing money every month, adjusting my expenses to make it happen. I even temporarily stopped contributing to my retirement plan, convincing myself that I could resume it later. For the me of that moment, that ring was an absolute priority. Today, when I think about it clearly, I realize how disconnected I was from reality. While I was striving to imagine a future together, Clara had been looking for a way out of the relationship for some time. Everything changed abruptly in a conversation I will never forget. It was a Tuesday in April. I had just gotten home from work, changed into comfortable clothes, and was starting to prepare dinner when she walked in directly from her shift. She stood in the kitchen with an expression I couldn't immediately interpret. "We need to talk," she said. Those words never announce anything good. I turned off the burner and faced her. "What's wrong?" She took a breath as if preparing for a fall. "Ethan, I think we should break up." For a few seconds, I felt like I heard the words, but couldn't connect them to their meaning. When I could finally speak, all I managed to say was, "Okay, can I ask why?" Her answer left me bewildered. "You're too good." At first I thought she was joking, but she wasn't. She repeated that I was too kind, too stable, too predictable, that yes, I had my life in order and was responsible, but that wasn't enough, that she needed more spark, more excitement. She even said that being with me was like dating her own father. I didn't know how to respond to that. "So, you want to leave me because I'm responsible?" "Don't put it like that," she replied defensively. "I just need someone with more intensity, someone who makes me feel alive." I tried to process what I was hearing. 3 years together, and it all boiled down to me not fitting her vision of an exciting life, that she preferred someone who made impulsive decisions over someone with a mortgage and a retirement plan. So I asked what I already suspected. "Is there someone else?" She didn't deny it. She just looked away before admitting she had met someone at a party that Sophie had organized the month before. "His name is Ryder," she said. "He's different from you, more exciting." She insisted that nothing physical had happened, that they were only talking, as if that erased the fact that she already had one foot out of the relationship. She added that she wanted to give that new connection a chance, and that it wouldn't be fair to stay with me if she was thinking about someone else. The minimal necessary honesty, I suppose. I nodded slowly. "If that's what you want, I won't stop you." I think she was bothered that I didn't have a more dramatic reaction. "Are you okay with this?" she asked with some disbelief. "No, but I also don't want to hold on to someone who doesn't want to stay anymore." She looked uncomfortable, almost disappointed by the lack of a scene. Then I suggested she gather her things. Her clothes were in the closet, and she had personal items in the bathroom. I didn't expect her to want to stay longer, talking after what she had just told me. She seemed surprised. "Right now? I thought we could keep talking." "What for? You've made your decision. If you want to be with someone more exciting, go ahead. I'm not going to try to convince you that I'm a good option." After a few seconds of silence, she went up to the bedroom. It took about 20 minutes. I continued preparing dinner while listening to her moving around the house, putting away her belongings. Coming down with her bag in hand, she stood near the door with a complicated expression. "Ethan, I really did care about you," she said. "Past tense, understood," I replied. "Don't be like that." "And how should I be? You told me I'm boring, that you found someone better. I'm just accepting what you just told me." She had no response. She opened the door and left. 3 years ended in a matter of minutes. I finished dinner, ate it in silence, and then called my best friend Matthew. His reaction was as direct as ever. "She left you because you were too good? That's the most absurd thing I've ever heard." I told him about Ryder. Matthew burst into incredulous laughter. "Let me guess. Motorcycle, tattoos, works in a bar?" I shook my head. "I don't know. I just know his name. Give it a few months. The exciting guys are fun until it's time to pay the bills." I appreciated his certainty, though at that moment I wasn't thinking about revenge or life setting her straight. I just wanted to move on. The following weeks were strange. Since we had mutual friends, many started asking me what had happened. I always answered the same thing. We wanted different things. I saw no reason to speak badly of her or generate unnecessary drama. What I did discover through rumors was that Clara was telling a completely opposite version. She claimed I was controlling, that I wouldn't let her have fun, that I refused to try new things. Totally false. But I wasn't interested in correcting her story. If that made it easier for her to justify her decision, so be it. I preferred to concentrate on my job and organizing my house, focusing on rebuilding my routine while letting everything else settle on its own. After the breakup, I found myself with too many free hours and too many thoughts swirling in my head. So I decided to channel all that energy into something I had been postponing for months. A complete renovation of the house's main bathroom. That place seemed frozen in a 1987 time capsule, with pink tiles, a fiberglass tub, shower combo, and a vanity unit that looked like it had been salvaged from a cheap old motel. Just looking at it reminded me of everything I hadn't updated in my life, because I was more focused on the relationship than on myself. The first weekend was dedicated exclusively to demolition. I grabbed the combo, took a deep breath, and started hitting. Every blow against the walls was a mix of liberation and catharsis. The sound of the tile breaking was almost therapeutic, as if every fragment that fell to the floor also took away some of the weight I was carrying. Buddy, my dog, watched from the doorway with his typical look of confusion and judgment, tilting his head as if genuinely wondering why I was destroying his home. In the following days, the bathroom became an obsessive project. After work, I would change, grab tools, and keep going. I installed gray porcelain tile that gave it a modern look. I installed a floating vanity with a vessel sink that completely transformed the aesthetic of the space. I replaced the old medicine cabinet. I swapped the antique light fixture for a warmer, more elegant one, and incorporated a new shower system with a rain-type sprayer. Every step, even the smallest ones, kept me focused. It was as if by rebuilding that space, I was also trying to rebuild myself. The entire project took me about 6 weeks of dedicated nights and full weekends. Between materials, tools, and a few aesthetic indulgences I allowed myself, I spent around $8,000. When I finally finished, the bathroom looked like it belonged to another house. Matthew came to see it, and after his typical exaggeratedly serious inspection, he commented with a satisfied tone, "It looks professional. This has nothing to do with that dreadful pink bathroom you had." Hearing that made me feel something akin to relief. For the first time in weeks, I felt pride. Furthermore, all that manual labor saved me mentally. It kept me active, busy, usefully tired. It prevented my head from getting caught up in things I couldn't change, especially Clara and Ryder. All those nights of noise, dust, tools, and background music gave me a rhythm, gave me structure, when emotionally everything was a bit messy. Matthew started coming over almost every weekend. Sometimes he helped. Other times he just sat in a corner talking to me while I made progress. Between ordering pizza, watching hockey, and getting paint on ourselves, a kind of small ritual formed that gradually restored my sense of normality. It was simple, but there was something valuable in that quiet, constant routine. One Saturday, while applying the second coat of paint, he broke the concentration with an observation. "You look relatively well. Not perfect, but you're moving forward." "It's not like she died," I replied while smoothing the paint. "We broke up. It happens to people." 3 years. That's 3 years, man. You don't have to be strong. I am. It just doesn't help me to sit around regretting things. Nothing changes that way. Matthew smiled approvingly. "That's you. By the way, my sister insists on introducing you to a friend of hers." "No way. It's a dinner, not a marriage proposal." "No, Matthew. I don't want to distract myself with something that would just be an emotional patch. Let me breathe." "Whatever you want," he said, raising his hands, though with an "I told you so" smile. "Still, I bet Clara is already partying with that Ryder guy, the professional spontaneous one. But you should start dating again too. Now is not the time." And that time I decided to give myself ended up being the best decision I could have made. Soon rumors started trickling in, loose comments, things I never asked to know, but that everyone strangely seemed eager to tell me. Andy, a coworker, told me one day in the cafeteria that he had seen Clara at a concert with a guy covered in tattoos from his neck to his forearms. Then Matthew's girlfriend mentioned that Sophie, one of Clara's closest friends, was genuinely worried because the new relationship seemed rushed and complicated. And to top it off, my neighbor Harvey, who always knows everything, somehow had information about the musician with no fixed employment. One afternoon, while walking Buddy, Harvey called me over from his yard. "Sorry to hear about your breakup." "Thanks, Harvey. Everything happens for a reason. They say your ex is now with a musician. Not very stable, from what I heard." "And how did you know that, Harvey?" With his typical theatrical flair, he touched his nose. "Connections, friend, but trust me, a stable guy like you deserves someone who values that." I didn't ask him anymore. It was no longer my life, my problem, or my responsibility. But the pieces kept coming together, as if the universe had decided to show me what I hadn't wanted to see before. Matthew took the situation to another level. He investigated for fun. He sent me messages all the time, some with screenshots. Ryder is 29. He works part-time at Vintage Sound's music store when he feels like it. He constantly skips work to rehearse with his band. What band? Broken Pavement. 6 years together, 12 performances, open mics, nothing more. No albums, just terrible recordings on SoundCloud with 50 plays. Why do you know all this? Because it's too funny. And I haven't even told you the best part. He was kicked out of his apartment 8 months ago for not paying rent. Now he couch surfs. He's living with a guy named Chris, but that guy's girlfriend is already tired of Ryder eating all the food in the house. The puzzle was complete. Ryder was nearly 30, but emotionally 19. He had no direction, no stability, and no ability to maintain a home for himself. "Your ex left you for someone who doesn't even have his own mattress," Matthew said, bursting out laughing. "He's not homeless," I replied, more out of reflex than conviction, just unsure of the housing status. "Ethan, he sleeps on other people's couches. That is literally homeless." I recognized the irony, I admit, but at the same time, I wasn't entirely happy. Deep down, what I felt was a bitter taste for Clara. She sought excitement, something different, a radical change, and ended up in a reality much more chaotic than she imagined. It was 3 months later, in the gardening section of Home Depot, when fate decided to cross our paths. I was looking at some planks for a small deck I wanted to build when I heard my name. It was her. Clara was unrecognizable, thinner, bags under her eyes, wearing clothes that weren't her style, and a haircut that tried to be daring, but gave her more an impression of exhaustion than modernity. "Ethan," she said, surprised. "Hello, Clara. How have you been?" "Good, good. Just busy with work." "I'm glad." The silence was dense. It was noticeable that she wanted to say something more, but was hesitant. "I heard you're dating someone," I said to ease the awkwardness. "Ryder, yes. He's artistic, very free. Just what I needed." She said it, but her expression didn't match. "And have you met anyone new?" "No, I've been focused on work and fixing up the house." The house, she repeated, as if the word had an unexpected weight. Always fixing something. That's what being an owner is like. There was a longer silence than the previous ones. She expected me to ask her something, but I didn't know what I was supposed to ask. Well, I have to go, I finally said. It was good to see you, Ethan. Wait, she said, gently taking my arm. We can talk, really talk. Maybe get a coffee, just to catch up. All my internal alarms went off instantly. I don't think that's a good idea. Please, just as friends. I should have said no. I should have walked away, but I made the mistake of being diplomatic. Maybe I'll text you. I didn't. She did 2 days later. Over the next few days, Clara insisted again. At first, it was a couple of random messages, but then she started calling and leaving me audio messages explaining that she urgently needed to talk to me. Against what common sense told me, I agreed to see her that Saturday morning for coffee and to clear the air once and for all. She arrived 15 minutes late, apologizing because Ryder had asked for her car to go to a rehearsal and, according to her, was late returning it. It wasn't exactly the best way to start. We ordered our drinks, sat down, and almost immediately, she began a well-rehearsed speech. She talked about how much she had reflected on our relationship during those months and everything she had supposedly learned. I let her talk while taking slow sips of my coffee, waiting for her to finally say what she really wanted to say. When she finally got to the point, she blurted out the phrase, "I think I made a mistake breaking up with you." There it was. I didn't react immediately. I simply nodded neutrally. Then she continued, "Ryder is a good person, but he's so unstable. He can't keep a job. He lives hand to mouth and expects me to cover practically everything. I'm exhausted, Ethan." I had forgotten what it was like to be with someone who really had their life under control. "Do you want to get back together?" I asked bluntly. She nodded enthusiastically. "I know I hurt you, and I'm very sorry, but I think you and I worked well. Maybe we could try again." I took another sip of coffee while processing this attempt at a return. She had left me because she considered me too boring. She had spent 3 months with an irresponsible guy, and now wanted to come back because she missed having someone who paid for dinners. I didn't reply. Finally, she blinked several times as if she hadn't understood. "How can you say no? Ethan, come on. You were with me for 3 years. That has to mean something." "It did," I replied, "until you decided I wasn't worth it and went after someone you found more exciting. I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted." "And now you do," I added, conveniently, right after discovering that your new boyfriend can't even pay for his own apartment. She made a clearly hurt face. "That's not fair." "You know what was unfair?" I countered. "That you left me for being too responsible, that you said I wasn't exciting enough for you, and that now you expect me to welcome you back with open arms just because you realized stability is important." "I made a mistake," she said, and her eyes started to fill with tears. "People make mistakes." "Yes, and mistakes have consequences," I replied. "Yours is that I don't trust you anymore. Please, Ethan, I'm asking for another chance." "And I'm telling you no," I answered. "I'm sorry things with Ryder didn't work out, but that's no longer my concern." She kept staring at me, expecting me to back down, as I had so many times when we were together. But that phase was over. I was no longer going to be her safe plan. "So, that's it?" she finally asked. 3 years together, and you're not even willing to try?" "You were the one who ended those 3 years, Clara," I replied, standing up. "I would have kept trying, but you decided you wanted something else." I left my half-finished coffee on the table. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I added, "but it won't be with me." I left before she could respond. I got into my truck, drove back home, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a kind of deep relief. That same night, Matthew called me. "They told me you ran into Clara," he commented. "You know how news travels. She wrote to Sophie crying because you wouldn't take her back. Sophie told my girlfriend, and well, you know the rest. Let me guess, now I'm the villain for not forgiving her?" "Basically," he replied, laughing. "According to the version going around, you're being cold and resentful, but between us, everyone is surprised, in a good way, that you didn't cave." "Why would I?" "Because you're a good person, Ethan. And good people usually take their exes back when they come begging." "Maybe I'm tired of being too good." "Perfect," he said. "Hold your boundaries." She made her decision. Throughout the week, comments continued to circulate about what was happening between Clara and Ryder, and nothing sounded encouraging. He had been kicked out of another apartment and was now living with her in her apartment. Clara was paying for absolutely everything, while he devoted himself to his musical career, a band with no income, no scheduled events, and only long hours of rehearsal. Ryder's only contribution to the household consisted of buying fast food with money he would then ask Clara to pay him back for. Her own friends were unofficially intervening, telling her she should leave him, but she insisted he just needed time to find his creative path. While all that was happening, I finished the deck construction project at my house, resumed dating, and continued with my life. I went out with several people. Although no connection progressed too far, I wasn't in a hurry. The simple process of rebuilding my routine was enough for me. 5 months after that conversation at the coffee shop, I met Diana. She was a landscape architect and worked on a commercial project that my company was involved in. It was one of those large developments with commercial areas, offices, and residences that required coordination among many teams. My firm handled the civil engineering part, hers, the exterior design and landscape planning. The first time I saw her was in a meeting room with 12 other people, reviewing blueprints and debating how slopes and drainage should adjust to her design concept. She was the only woman present, and yet she commanded everyone's attention without needing to raise her voice. Her confidence and technical mastery were evident. At one point, the developer's manager proposed moving a depression in the terrain that would completely ruin her approach. She not only explained why that was unfeasible, but supported it with real data and site analysis, without resorting to baseless opinions. Half the engineers in the room, including me, were impressed. When the meeting ended, I caught up with her in the parking lot. "What you did in there was impressive," I told her. "Few landscape architects I work with handle drainage calculations well." She smiled. "Most never worked on site before moving into design. I spent 5 years as a supervisor and surveyor before going back to school. I learned to speak engineer properly." We talked for about 20 minutes about our careers, the project, and how complicated it could be to coordinate such distinct teams. She was intelligent, direct, and had a dry sense of humor that reminded me of Matthew. The meetings continued. Over the next month, we had at least 6 coordination meetings, and every time we coincided, I noticed more things about her. Her meticulous preparation, how she defended design principles without losing the ability to compromise on secondary issues, and the respectful and equal treatment she gave everyone, from the project director to the most novice engineer who was just there to take notes. After our 3rd project meeting, we all agreed we needed to clear our minds and take a break, so the team decided to go for lunch at a small sandwich shop a few blocks from the building. It was one of those places with worn wooden tables, long lines at peak hours, and the smell of freshly toasted bread filling the entire space. We hadn't planned it much. We just left spontaneously, as if our collective brain was urgently requesting a break from the endless emails, diagrams, and revisions we had been dealing with for days. By chance, I ended up sitting next to Diana. As soon as we sat down, the conversation flowed with surprising ease. For the entire hour, we talked about anything not related to work, frustrated trips due to weather, anecdotes about restaurants where we had ordered dishes that looked incredible in photos but were absolute disasters, and even the last movie each of us had seen. It turned out we were both avid hikers, that we both lived alone in our own properties, something uncommon in our circle, and that we largely agreed on how adults should handle their responsibilities. Diana told me several stories about complicated clients who demanded impossible things, or who wanted her to read their minds to design gardens they couldn't even describe. She also mentioned projects that, in her words, had turned into genuine nightmares, like when a client demanded trees that couldn't grow in the local climate. I told her about my bathroom renovation and how tearing down the pink tiles from the 80s had become a kind of personal therapy that helped me process my breakup with Clara. "Demolition therapy," she repeated, laughing. "That sounds better than any psychologist session. I completely sanded and restored my deck last year after a horrible breakup. Nothing helps you move on like 8 continuous hours of sanding and varnishing without thinking about anything other than not splintering your fingers." "And what happened with that relationship, if I may ask?" I said, curious, without wanting to seem nosy. Diana took a sip of her drink and sighed as if the memory still weighed on her. I was with a guy for 2 years who swore he would open his own business someday. He never did. He practically lived off my income. He worked part-time at a gym, and the rest of the time he spent daydreaming. When I asked him to take things seriously, he accused me of not supporting his goals. According to him, support meant me paying all the bills while he planned. Sounds familiar, I replied, half joking, half serious. I was left for being too stable and predictable. She raised an eyebrow in disbelief. Too stable? That's like complaining that water is too wet. It makes no sense. She wanted someone more unpredictable, with more spark. She ended up with a musician who couch surfs. And how is that brilliant choice working out for her? From what I've heard, not very well. We shared a look of silent understanding. The kind of complicity that only arises when two people have learned similar lessons through similar emotional blows. After our fourth project meeting, I finally mustered the courage to ask her if she would like to have dinner outside of work hours sometime. I immediately clarified that it didn't have to be a date. I was simply interested in continuing the conversation without 12 other people interrupting every 5 minutes to discuss metrics or deliverables. Diana accepted without hesitation. That Friday, we went to a steakhouse. We spent more than 3 hours talking about practically everything: our families, the moments that had defined us, future goals, awkward experiences that later turned into good anecdotes. Diana told me how she had founded her landscape architecture company 5 years ago, working from her small condo until she gathered enough clientele to rent an office and hire 4 employees. I told her about buying my house, the renovations I had done on my own, and my plans to get into buying and selling properties when I retired. "You have a clear plan," she observed while cutting her steak. "I like that. Many people just go with the flow without thinking too much." "I was with someone who preferred drifting," I commented. "It didn't end well. I dated someone who said plans were a form of control. That didn't end well either," she replied. "In the end, I realized there's nothing wrong with wanting an organized life." After that dinner, we started seeing each other frequently. Dinners once or twice a week. Weekend hikes accompanied by Buddy, working on our houses when one needed a hand. Everything felt natural, simple, without the artificial tension that sometimes accompanies the early stages of a relationship. Diana valued that I had stability, goals, and concrete habits. She had also bought her condo in a neighborhood very similar to mine and knew exactly what it takes to maintain a property in the good condition. Sometimes she came to my house and rolled up her sleeves to help me install lights, paint walls, or check pipes. She wasn't one of those people who observe from the doorway while others do the heavy lifting. Other times I accompanied her to her lot to help her renovate the garden, build benches, or plant flowers. It was a balanced dynamic, without one person shouldering more responsibility than the other. Diana ran a small but solid business. She spoke of clients, contracts, deadlines, employee payments, and all the details that prove a company functions thanks to effort, not empty dreams. She knew what real responsibility meant. She knew that life isn't just about being spontaneous. One Saturday morning, while planting trees in her backyard, part of the redesign she herself had created, she looked at me and said, "You know what I like about you?" "My irresistible charm, I suppose," I joked, while trying to straighten a newly planted tree. "Besides that," she replied, laughing a little, "I like that you're reliable. If you say you'll do something, you do it. And believe me, that's worth much more than people think." Is that a compliment or a hidden criticism? Definitely a compliment. Last year, I dated someone who was always seeking thrills. You know what happened? He forgot to pay his insurance and ended up crashing my car in an accident. Being boring is very underrated. I prefer to call it responsible. "It's the same thing," she said, shrugging. "And it's attractive." We had been dating for about 2 months when I ran into Clara again. It was at a crowded supermarket on a Saturday. This time, she was accompanied by Ryder. He was exactly what I imagined. Tight pants that looked like they were from an outdated catalog, an old band t-shirt, and tattoos covering his arms. They were arguing in the vegetable section about whether they could afford to buy organic produce. Clara saw me first. Her expression went through a brief but evident sequence of surprise, discomfort, and something that tried to transform into feigned cheerfulness. "Ethan, hi." "Hello, Clara," I replied cordially. Then I greeted Ryder with a slight nod. "And you must be Ryder." He eyed me suspiciously. Yeah, the ex. No, that's me, I replied without giving it much importance. An awkward silence followed while Clara nervously twisted a bag of apples in her hands. So, what have you been up to lately? She asked in a tone that tried to fill the empty space. The usual, work, home renovations. And you two? Good, very good, she quickly replied. Ryder's band got a gig. Ryder intervened enthusiastically. We're opening for a Denver band at a club. It's going to be huge. That's great, I said calmly. Congratulations. More awkward silence. Ryder scanned me as if trying to figure out why Clara had been with me. I sincerely had no interest in his opinion or presence. Well, I'm finishing my shopping, I said to cut the interaction. Take care. I walked away before Clara could try to prolong the conversation. I managed to hear Ryder murmur something like, "He seems boring," followed by a quick and insecure defense from her. When I told Diana about it, she couldn't help but laugh. Your ex is living with a jobless musician who thinks grocery shopping is a good time to boast about opening for a band no one knows. And yet, she left you for him? According to her, I was too good. Diana shook her head. Well, it looks like she solved that problem. Some people only value what they had when it's too late. Her loss, my gain. It was a simple, even casual phrase, but it hit me in an unexpected way. For the first time since my breakup with Clara, I felt genuine satisfaction with the direction my life was taking. In theory, the story should have ended there. I had moved on. I was dating someone incredible, and Clara seemed to be living in an endless chain of self-chosen conflicts, each on our own path, no drama, case closed. But Clara didn't see it that way. First came the text messages, memes that were supposed to make me laugh, random questions about home repairs, comments without much importance. I responded politely, briefly, without giving way to long conversations. Then she started commenting on my social media posts. I would upload a photo of a hike, and she'd respond with things like, "I miss walking together." I'd post updates on a home project, and she'd write, "You were always so good at this." Diana noticed it right away. "Your ex is acting weird on Instagram." "Yeah, I saw it," I replied. "I'm going to talk to her." I sent her a private message. "Hi, I appreciate you being cordial, but your constant comments are making me uncomfortable. I'm dating someone, and it's not appropriate." Her response came immediately. "I'm just being friendly. Can't we be friends?" "It's not ideal. I think it's better to maintain some distance." "That's unfair. You're with someone new, and I can't even talk to you." "I'm not forbidding you anything. I'm just asking you to respect boundaries." For almost a week, I received no more messages from her, and I thought she had finally decided to move on with her life. There were no comments, no calls, no attempts to resume contact, until one Thursday near 11 p.m., my phone started ringing persistently. I was already in bed with the lights off, so I let the call go to voicemail. However, she called again and again. Finally, I answered, worried by her insistence. "Clara, what's wrong?" I asked. Still groggy. Her voice was trembling as if she had been crying for a while. "I need help, Ethan. Ryder and I argued. He stormed out and hasn't come back. I can't pay the rent alone. I don't know what to do." I sat up in bed, ready to understand what was happening. I asked her to breathe and explain calmly, but what I received was a rushed account. Apparently, Ryder had lost his job at the music store for repeatedly being late, and instead of ensuring they had the rent money, he spent it all on new band equipment. When Clara confronted him, he reacted by calling her controlling and left the house. Despite our history, I felt compassion. "That's a difficult situation," I admitted. "Have you tried contacting his friends?" "They're not answering." "Ethan, I'm panicking. The rent is due in 3 days. I have no way to cover it." "And your parents? They'll tell me they were right about Ryder. I don't want to hear that right now." It was then that I asked something I had been avoiding. "Clara, why are you calling me?" She didn't hesitate. "Because you always knew what to do. You were always the responsible one, the sensible one. I don't want to get back together with you. I just need guidance. Please, Ethan, I wouldn't do this if I wasn't desperate." Against my better judgment, I spent about 20 minutes helping her think of real options. I suggested requesting an extension from the landlord, taking extra shifts at work, looking for a cheaper place, and, if she couldn't avoid it, talking to her parents, even if sermons were included. But then she asked something that made it clear where her head was at. "And if Ryder comes back and has nowhere to stay?" "Clara," I replied, You just told me he spent your rent money on guitars. Maybe him leaving isn't such a bad thing. She tried to justify him. He's under a lot of pressure with the band. The band that doesn't pay him, I stressed. There was silence. Then I told her that, before thinking about Ryder, she needed to secure her housing situation. Finally, she sighed in defeat. I know, I wish... Well, never mind. Thanks for listening to me. I know it's strange to call you, and I want to tell you that I'm very sorry about how I ended things with you and what I said about you being boring. It wasn't true. I was the one who didn't value stability. I appreciate you saying that, I replied, but that doesn't change things. We hung up. I stayed awake for a long time, processing her words. Part of me felt sorry for her, but another part knew that the best thing had been to step away from that chaos. The next morning, Diana asked me what had happened, so I told her just the necessary details. She listened attentively and then commented, "You were very kind to help her for so long. She sounded truly desperate." "She is," I replied. "She's learning that excitement doesn't keep a roof over your head." Diana added, "And I'm warning you, she's going to keep calling you." She wasn't wrong. 2 days later, Clara started texting me for suggestions on cheap apartments. Then she asked if I could co-sign a new lease for her, as her credit history was poor. Then she wanted to know if I knew of any temporary jobs. Every message was an attempt to cross the border of, "I just need advice." I responded with the bare minimum, cordial but firm. These were problems she needed to solve. A week later, Matthew called me laughing. "You won't believe it. Clara showed up at my door crying, saying you weren't helping her. She asked me to convince you to save her." "Seriously?" I asked incredulously. I told her she was delusional if she expected the man she left for being too good to rescue her now. I told her she chose a guy who lived on other people's couches. That was harsh. "It was necessary," I commented. "I told her to call her parents and stop looking for you." After that, absolute silence. 3 weeks without a single message. One day, Sophie texted me to warn me. "Clara got evicted. Ryder left her. She's on my couch out of money. Just wanted to let you know in case she contacts you." I thanked her for the warning. It wasn't a surprise. The lifestyle Clara had sought was showing its true cost. When I told Diana, she asked, "Do you feel bad for her?" "A little," I admitted, "but not enough to get involved." She nodded. This is what happens when impulsive decisions are made. She wanted adventure, and adventure without stability is pure mess. She was right, and yet I couldn't help feeling a certain guilt. 3 years sharing life with someone leaves traces. Seeing that person sink doesn't bring satisfaction. It brings sadness. But I knew that helping her would send the wrong message, that she could mess up, and I would always be ready to catch her. That's not generosity. It's allowing her to repeat patterns. 2 months later, during an informal work meeting, I received a message from an unknown number. "Hello, this is Victoria, Clara's mom. I know you're not together anymore, but I wanted to thank you. I don't know what you said to her, but she finally asked us for help. She moved back home and is starting over. She told us that talking to you made her realize she had to own her decisions. Thank you for being firm when we couldn't be." I later showed the message to Diana. "Her mother thanks you for not taking her back." Ironic. I replied to Victoria, briefly and cordially. After that, I definitively closed that chapter. Over time, the relationship between Diana and me grew even stronger. After many months of planning our future, we decided to take the next step. We got engaged. It wasn't a grandiose moment full of artifice, but something quiet and sincere, exactly what we both needed. Shortly after, we found a house that suited both of us, with enough space to grow and build something that was truly ours. Moving there not only marked a new chapter, but confirmed that the stability we shared was not boring, but deeply comfortable and secure. The cohabitation flowed naturally. We organized ourselves to work together on the renovations, discussing ideas, updating rooms, and finding a rhythm that made everything from simple chores to important decisions feel collaborative. There were never any complaints about my way of being or comparisons to how exciting life supposedly had to be to feel fulfilled. Diana understood that my tranquility wasn't a lack of character, but a different way of building well-being. Over the months, I heard indirectly that Clara, after recovering financially, found a more stable job. She managed to become independent again and started dating someone in the finance field, someone who apparently fit better with what she was now looking for. I was happy to hear it, though from a distance her life was no longer part of mine, and that was fine. As for Ryder, the last I heard came from isolated comments. He continued moving from couch to couch with no clear direction, still chasing musical dreams that never materialized. He'll likely continue that way for a while. Some cycles are hard to break. As for me, I found a peace I hadn't had in years. My day-to-day life stopped feeling like a constant effort to prove something to someone. I had a home we were slowly transforming, 2 dogs, including Buddy, who has become an essential presence in our routine, and a life that, though simple by others' standards, was full of stability, affection, and shared projects. It wasn't an existence full of drama or major shocks. It was simply a life well built. And by now, I understood that that was precisely what I had always wanted.